All right. Well, I am very excited to introduce our first panel of the day. You may notice that there is a real theme around caregiving and self care this year. We thought that given the situation in the pandemic, we all could use a little bit more focus on caregiving for ourselves as well as for others. So, our first panel today will be our caregiver panel. We have three individuals today who served as caregivers during a loved one's cancer journey. We have Donna and Claudia and Danae, and they are going to share with you their experiences as a caregiver and strategies that helped them as they supported their loved one going through cancer treatment. I want to thank all of you for being part of our day today. Please feel free to go ahead and unmute yourselves and turn your cameras on. And Claudia, would you be willing to get us started with talking a little bit about your experience?
Absolutely. Let me just switch. Okay. Good morning. My name is Claudia Tice, and my husband Bill was diagnosed in 2017 with his throat cancer. He first received radiation and chemo, which normally has a cure rate of 85%. But he ended up 6 months later, after completing that treatment, becoming one of the lucky ones in that 15% block for which radiation and chemo don't work. So we had to head back in for the trickier 12-plus-hour surgery to remove the cancer and rebuild his throat area and hopefully get all the cancer out at the same time, which was the case when he was discharged a week after surgery. And here we are 2+ years later, still cancer-free. As a caregiver, it can be hard at times to wrap your head around what is needed, let alone provide the support your partner needs in any given situation, because I can't fully experience what Bill was going through, but I viewed my job to make the process less overwhelming. So here goes with what helped me and us the most. Not being familiar with cancer and its treatments, other than what one might see on TV, we were blessed to attend the seminar the Oncology Nurses and Supportive Care Program provides free of charge. And it happened to be on the day we were first at Stanford for a multidisciplinary committee meeting. It was an informal setting in a conference room adjacent to the infusion center. And the materials handed out were so helpful as to what one might expect. For example, there could be choices on what chemo a patient could receive and what side effects or concerns for the caregiver one might need to be aware of. The best part was the tour of the infusion center itself, which when we did return for Bill's first infusion, made it less intimidating. One of the best first steps we had on this journey. Also in that presentation were several recommendations on how to communicate with all your family and friends about what is going on in the least intrusive way, so that the focus remains on treatment and healing and not having to answer emails, phone calls, or texts incessantly, let alone setting boundaries for visitors, especially important after Bill's surgery, which included a tracheostomy, skin grafts, and wound healing. We chose CaringBridge rather than something like Facebook because not everyone we wanted to keep informed used or wanted to use Facebook. CaringBridge is free, must have at least one author, and for those who want to be kept in the loop, an email, which CaringBridge will send out notification when there's an update. I was the primary author, relaying what was going on, but there were times Bill felt up to describing his perspective of the journey, so also had author privileges. This platform allows comments and signs of support from those who are following your story, along with allowing for donations to the website if you or your supporters so desire, as CaringBridge plans to keep the site free. The next biggest thing is to be organized during the diagnoses, treatments, follow-ups, next step information, let alone the daily grind of medication schedules, Heather exercises, attending treatment sessions, getting food prepared and ingested. It can seem like there's no end, let alone there are plenty of handouts to help along the way, and you certainly don't want to lose them. Also, there's billing and your insurance explanation of benefits to stay on top of. However, we also went to a lot of movies to take our minds off the daily grind, and that helped our sanity. My favorite helps are what I call my brain book. So called because I started using this old daytimer calendar system with note pages to document what treatments my father was receiving during his dementia years when I cared for him. I divided it between between the doctors Bill saw, the chemo sessions, and dated each of the sessions so it was easy to refer to them. That way, if Bill didn't remember something from a meeting, chances are I took a note on it. It's also just under the date for the meeting, and don't be afraid to ask or prompt your partner to ask the question. A 3-ring route treatment. Since I tend to rip pages if I just 3-hole punch them, I decided the plastic sheets work better for me. And an accordion file with dividers for room for folders for the insurance documents and Stanford billing statements to monitor if any claims were not being processed in a timely fashion, along with pharmacy costs of medications your partner may be taking. All this information is important at tax time. A daily routine sheet to assist in making all that needs to happen in a way you and your partner can work towards. I generated it based on what the tasks of the moment were and modified it as things were added or deleted. Ultimately, become a master user of My Health to check on appointment times, blood draws required, post-visit notes if you prefer to read them online, etc. We noticed radiation and chemo that occasionally appointments were changed, and My Health didn't appear to have a notify of change function at that time. So we got in the habit of checking the evening before as to what the next day appointments time were to ensure we didn't miss them. If your partner is hospitalized, I recommend being there for the morning and evening rounds by the residents and doctors. It was very helpful for both of us. I could ask questions on Bill's behalf. Writing on the whiteboard just took too much time, and also ask about anticipated treatments, when they were to happen, who we should expect, etc. Hospitals can be very hectic, and being there to support the process, learn what you have to do when they get discharged, and ask for clarification makes expectations of what can happen on the road to recovery that much easier. In case you think that journey to being cancer-free was all sunshine and roses, the daily routine can be one of the hardest things, especially after treatment is done and you're trying to come to grips with day-to-day living. There are times, even now, when trying to keep Bill on task is like dealing with a toddler, because the grind of what is now part of your life forever may never improve and can be overwhelming. Therefore, be sure to celebrate each improvement, no matter how small. Doing your best to be the cheerleader for your partner can be a daunting task, and there were days, especially after the surgery part, I didn't think I was going to make it, as there was just too much between multiple home visits each week for the first few months from nurses and physical therapists to ensure Bill was making progress and I was doing the wound care properly, suctioning and keeping the area clean around the tracheostomy until it was removed and healed, dressing the open wounds properly from where the skin grafts were taken, cleaning around the feeding tube from the gunk that would surround the tube's entrance into the belly, let alone the daily administration of food, water, and medication at prescribed intervals via the tube until Bill felt up to doing it himself. The critical thing is to always accept help if it's offered, or don't be afraid to ask for help, something many of us may not be used to doing. Certainly, I was not. What helped me immensely is that anything medical is not intimidating, but rather fascinating and something about which I'm curious. And I don't believe one can receive too much factual information. The team approach at Stanford helped both of us learn that letting them know if something wasn't working, they'd figure out a way forward. For example, palliative care helped Bill ensure his quality of life wasn't degraded while ensuring his pain was well managed pre and post-operatively, while letting me vent regarding the areas that frustrated me. I also wrote down my experiences of the pre-post-op period, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and provided it to the primary leads in Bill's post-op care to give the staff an opportunity to see where they could improve, what was going well already, and possible teaching moments for the residents we interacted with immediately pre and post-operatively during Bill's hospitalization. I hope a few of these tips are helpful to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Uh, Donna, do you want to take over next?
Sure, I'd be happy to. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for having me today. I'm Donna McDonald, and my partner Tony was diagnosed with stage 4 HPV positive tonsil cancer 3 years ago. In fact, we attended this symposium in 2018, about a week before his treatment started. And I remember attending the symposium in a complete state of sheer panic, and was so grateful for the symposium. So I was really happy to have the opportunity to be here today. I just put together some thoughts. I think overall, though, facing such a daunting prognosis and being on the other side of it is, for people going through this today, is just to have that hope. It's pretty amazing what the Stanford team can do. And, Tony is proof of that, as so many others are that are here today. When I think about my caregiver journey, I think, number one, people told me this at the time, to take care of myself, and I didn't at all. I actually lost about 15 pounds during Tony's treatment. And I'm not the type of person that can lose weight without trying. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So I looked back, I tracked my weight during that time, and it was amazing how steep the decline was during the time that Tony was, going through his treatment. And so I would say taking care of yourself, people say that, what does that mean for you? There were times where I would sit with Tony, this is pre-COVID, in the infusion center. Why didn't I go for a walk? That probably would have helped both of us if I had taken better care of myself during his treatment journey, if I could have had that vision towards us having our life back together 3 years later. Also, along with taking care of yourself, I was terrible at Googling things in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep, and it would just make my anxiety even worse, because I would find, I couldn't really find stories of people that had had Tony's diagnosis that were doing well. And B, I would, of course, dig up all kinds of terrible stories that would just make my fear completely ratchet up. So I'd say try not to Google at 2 in the morning when you can't sleep. That was not beneficial for me, probably, through this process. Like Claudia, I think being organized. I had my own little cheat sheet notebook. This is an actual version of it where I tracked all of Tony's calories. I tracked his fluid intake. I took notes from appointments. I tracked his medication schedule to make sure we never fell off track, especially when he was going through chemo. Tony had, because his cancer had metastasized, he actually had a spot in his liver when he was diagnosed. He had 3 induction chemos at the beginning of his treatment. I call them the big chemos because they were big, and 3-parters that lasted for a week, where he had a pump that he brought home with him that infused him with one of the treatments. And then he started the chemo and radiation treatment after the 3 big chemos. So keeping track of his anti-nausea meds, his pain meds, all of that, the notebook and being organized really helped me with that. One of the things that I think was one of the most freeing moments for me was, as a caregiver, the moment I heard of his diagnosis, my panic mind went into like, oh, he needs to start eating broccoli and salmon and all of these anti-cancer foods. And I was panicked at trying to think about how to get enough calories in him while feeding him these healthy foods. And one of the nurses at the infusion center immediately said, I don't care if you feed him chocolate milkshakes for the next 6 months, worry about the nutrition later. And that just freed me from this panic over trying to be the perfect caregiver, giving him these nutritious meals. I think one thing that came to mind for me was being willing to be the bad guy. At the end of Tony's treatment, he was in the hospital, and he didn't want to go for one of his final radiations. It was probably, the 30th radiation. He really didn't feel up to it. He really didn't want to go. When I got to the hospital to visit him, I found that he had bumped his morning appointment to the afternoon, and he was still saying, I don't want to go, I don't want to do this. I got on the phone with Allison and talked to Allison about this, and she said it's a really bad idea for him to miss that radiation treatment. And so I basically had to tell Tony he had to do it. And that was, for me, maybe one of the most difficult moments in the journey, because I really had to put my foot down and say, please just do it for me. And I felt terrible about asking him to do something like that he didn't want to do. I'm glad I did in hindsight, because he did not miss that radiation appointment. I think just having trust. Our Stanford team, Dr. Kalivas, Jesse, Dr. Beadle, Allison, like just such an incredible team. Just trusting in them and knowing that they're there for you for whatever you need. It's incredible how much empathy and humanity that the team at Stanford has. And I cherish each of those people in my heart for the rest of my life, because they saved Tony's life. This whole team at Stanford is part of that journey. I think Claudia mentioned this, like, don't be afraid of asking for what you need. It was clear that Tony couldn't drink enough water. He started having trouble drinking enough water, and I knew he needed a certain amount of fluid every day. So we talked to the team about that, and we ended up just going in for hydration intravenously every day throughout his treatment, because it was just not going to be possible for him to drink enough water. So if you find yourself bumping into something where it's just not working, ask the Stanford team for what you could do as an alternate to that. We also asked for some help from a therapist at one point, because Tony was really struggling with, he hadn't felt sick. The only way that we knew he had cancer was the lump in his neck. And so making sense of, I don't feel sick, but I have this life-threatening situation happening was difficult for him to process and difficult for us to process. So we asked for help getting through that. I'd say my other tips are, trying to kind of think of ways to make the journey have fun moments. I did something sort of funny in hindsight. I bought 35 gifts and wrapped them, and I had a pile of presents, and it was my radiation advent calendar. So every day that he went in for radiation, I gave him a different gift. Some of them were gag gifts. Some of them were, things that I knew he needed. Some of them came from his family. And the reason I say in hindsight it was kind of funny is that I found out actually this year that Tony didn't know what an advent calendar was. He never had one as a kid. So I went through all this, trouble to get this advent calendar type gift thing arranged for him. And he appreciated it. He just didn't get the tie-in to an advent calendar. And then I would also just say, like, the silver linings that come from this. Tony and I just spent the last weekend in Lake Tahoe with a lifelong friend who I met 2 years ago at this symposium. And I say lifelong friend because she will be a lifelong friend. We feel like we've known each other forever. And she was treated by the same team at Stanford. We bonded. We are, I describe her as my silver lining. In that, you never know where those like bright moments will come. I also describe our dog Vinny as a silver lining. Tony loves dogs, but I had a cat coming into our relationship, so we never got a dog. And after Tony finished treatment, about 3 months later, I said, "We're getting a dog." And he said, "Really?" And I said, "Yep, the cat's just going to have to deal with it." And the cat has dealt with it, and we now have 2 dogs. So I think trying to celebrate those moments. And I think I might be close to time. Heather, do I have time just to show a few pictures?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. Hopefully this works. Can you see the picture of the beach? Great.
Yes.
So we live in Half Moon Bay, and this picture was taken in April of 2018. And it was the last night that we went out for a glass of wine. We knew that Tony had a cancer diagnosis. We didn't know yet that it had metastasized. We didn't know yet, what stage it was, but we knew that this was going to be our last glass of wine for a long time. And I just remember us sitting there looking at the beautiful view and having such a heavy weight on us, and not knowing if we'd ever be able to sit there and have a glass of wine together again. So that picture was taken in that moment. I remember while we were sitting there, I called my sisters to let them know what was happening. So it was a very heavy moment. And I wish I had a picture of us sitting there with a blue sky. That has happened recently. The picture on the tulips, this was a bouquet my boss sent me at the time, and just it was right after Tony was diagnosed, and it meant so much for her to do that. I took a screenshot actually on the right. April 28th, 2018 was the symposium date. And I took a picture of this book, Things I Wish I Had Known, Cancer Caregivers Speak Out. It's pretty interesting just in the full circleness of me being here today, talking about my experience as a caregiver. There's Tony, my Superman, getting infused with hydration at one point during treatment, and there he is with his certificate at the completion of radiation with one of the amazing Stanford team members. I thought a before and after would be interesting. The before picture, you can see that golf ball lump in Tony's neck. That was right before treatment started, so probably April of 2018. And the picture on the right was September of 2018. No lump. We could actually feel the lump disappearing after his first big chemo. And it was just, it's incredible to see the difference in that picture from 5 months. And finally, this is us last weekend in Lake Tahoe. As I mentioned, we went with our dear friend, Amy, and spent the weekend together. And, you know, I think if you think about that first picture with the glass of wine or last glass of wine to this is sort of that full picture of life really has returned to what we wanted it to return to. And there are our dogs, which are also part of the gift that we got from going through this experience. And that is everything I had prepared. Thank you for having me today, Heather.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Donna. You guys are making it really hard for me to keep myself from crying. Amazing, amazing. All right, Danae, your turn to take it away.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. I am Danae, sounds like Renee. I'm a daughter, a yoga teacher, and a caregiver extraordinaire. So because I'm a yoga teacher, I want to start by offering a very simple practice that's accessible to everyone because we're all able to take a breath. And it's called the clearing breath, where you breathe in through the nose and you make a great big sound as loud as you want through an open mouth, and to not be shy. And think in your mind, I am releasing on the exhale. Here we go. 2 more, please. I am releasing. So I needed that to do this and be here with you, and I hope that serves you as well today and any day later on in this journey. I first heard the phrase new normal in 2005. My mom's oncologist mentioned it at the time of her diagnosis of ovarian cancer. So when the time came for my father to receive his official diagnosis on July 6th of 2017, I really wished that I could get a cash refund for all my caregiver experience. But that's not the case. That's not the case. And I say that in an attempt to offer humor and some levity to this situation, because cancer diagnosis is heavy for the patient, my father, for me as the daughter. But humor is so helpful, and movement is so helpful. Our journey is a little different. My father knew something was wrong. He feared something was wrong, and we were in a different medical system prior to our arrival to Stanford. And kept asking, he kept asking, is something wrong? I think I feel something growing in my throat. It was base of tongue cancer, stage 4. And he got dismissed, and he got dismissed. And so I share this little detail to the caregivers and everyone here, like, you know your body better than anyone. That's something I always say to my yoga students. Trust your body's wisdom and speak up and ask questions and get in people's faces and get up their butts. You know, you're not going to win any points about being polite when it comes to matters of health. You are so in your right to feel empowered and be bold in your ask, your curiosity, your need for repetition if you didn't get it the first time, you know? So yeah, we had all the radiations. I remember so vividly that first meeting, the tumor board meeting, and then meeting with doctors individually. And Dr. Beadle is here. She's right below me on my screen. I just love that because I adore her so, so much. And my father, who's very shy in terms of internet and photos and anything, he's here in spirit. He actually is still alive. I mean, he's in spirit with us here. He's not present. He challenged her about a number of radiations because he likes to negotiate. And she modeled such seriousness and such compassion at the same time. I still feel that so deeply in that moment when we were in that tiny room and basically saying, this is the matter of fact situation we have to do. My father wanted to do, you know, like 29 instead of 33 or whatever the number was. And I appreciate that because that just helps set the pace for like, wow, this is super serious. And we don't know where we're going. We know it's super serious. We have to accept. And that's another word I want to offer. And it's so, so hard. So hard is acceptance and being in the moment. So present in the moment. I, as a yoga teacher, definitely failed in terms of my self-care. When it came to taking care of myself, I chose to care for my father more than I chose for myself. And the other caregivers have shared that as well. I think that's a big symptom of caregiverology. We somehow lack in that capacity to also fill up our cup. But I can tell you, I had my breaking point. I had my right off the moment of the cliff. I'm going to fall off this cliff if I don't start taking that walk, like Donna said. Even 10 minutes, like just be out in the sun, sit outside in the sun for 5 minutes. You know, our family member that we're caring for, they are stronger than we think they are, you know, because they are the ones facing this critical journey. We're along for the ride. And I would also offer that as much as I, you know, wanted to do all the things, I need to also trust and give it up to the medical team, you know, like they are the experts and we must honor and respect that. And also know that, you know, being in the present moment is a real gift for my dad and for me, and humor. And gosh, I don't know, I'm trying not to get all sad. I'm holding back. It's so like reliving it, like all the times of radiation. You know, he was scheduled for 8 chemos. He only made 7. He got admitted into the hospital with a failure to thrive and ultimately had to have a feeding tube put in. And that's some scary shit, you know? And being readmitted into the hospital and getting set up in a SNF and then ending up in the ER at a different hospital because that SNF was in a different location, going to Mountain View. And, you know, him saying he's seeing my mom in the corner, thinking he's on his last leg, having a priest come and do last rites. He wasn't even Catholic. My mom was Catholic. He wanted to connect with her in that way. Like, caregiving is hard. It's so hard. But if I can offer just being patient with yourself, having those moments where you are putting yourself first is so vital, you know, because our health is important too. The caregiver's health is important too, to not miss things or overlook things. Yeah, but I'm happy and joyful that, you know, it's 2021 and, you know, there's no clinical signs. even in the time of COVID, there was still a scoping, which is, not exciting for the patient, but it's exciting for the caregiver to make sure that these metrics are still happening, and the ways that things can be assessed are still occurring, so we can be in the clear. Yeah. Whew. I don't know, I'm all over the place. But I would never give it up, this experience, like it's my gift. I always say this to people I meet, doctors, even the primary care doctor I just met 2 Mondays ago, who said, "Oh, you're amazing," because my dad gave an example of how I drove 70 miles every day for about 3 months when he was in a sniff, and I stayed 12 hours minimum. Not joking. Spent the night in the lobby. Not joking. Curled up into his bed because I also lost weight too, Donna. Not joking. But that's my gift to my father, to be able to do that. That's how I viewed it. And that's how even though I did reach my cliff, almost fell off, thankfully did not. My brother finally flew out from DC to save me, finally, after begging and pleading for support. Yeah, I'm good. Sorry, a little bit, all the feels, I have all the feels.
I think we all share in all the feels after listening to the three of you, and thank you so much, all of you, for sharing and for all of the wonderful work that you did for your loved ones. You're really inspirational, really important. I know everybody is feeling very moved right now. I don't know if we have any questions that anybody would like to ask any of these amazing, wonderful women. If you could give one piece of advice, each of you have one piece of advice to give. It could be something that really worked well for you or that you didn't do that you wish you had done. What would that one last key piece be?
My advice would be, I wish I could give this advice to myself back then. Don't go to the worst case scenario. Visualize a good ending and believe it, because it is possible.
Thank you.
I think for me, that means yesterday's over with. And yes, hopefully there's a tomorrow, but just stay in the day because that's all you've got.
Thank you.
I'll offer with something my dad always says. You gotta look up. You gotta look up. Like even in the face of a cancer diagnosis, he looked up, and he also has a phrase of Bummerville Junction. Then he don't go down Bummerville Junction. Look up.
Love it. Thank you all so much.